and we have probably about 20 to 25 people here in the room as well. As many people know, our Public Facilities Department has been working with our architect on this project and has been going through the Historic Districts Commission for about the past year, working with them to come up with a design that they would feel would be appropriate in the historic district. And the design that will be presented today by the architect, Jeff McElvery. Everybody has that title.
You know, I think everybody here has already seen the design.
Well, there are, if you would let me finish, there are also.
Full presentation of the design. We need to talk about what our feelings are, because we've had chance to look at it.
I would greatly appreciate it if you wouldn't interrupt me. It would be much easier if we go through the design, which is not the full design, the presentation that people have seen in the past. It includes new renderings as requested by the abutters. And so I think it's important to go through this presentation so that you can see what it looks like from different angles, from different yards at different seasons, as the architect put together, as he was requested to do. And so I think it's important to go through that. And then we'll go through a series of questions from people both online and in the room, where people would be recognized. And I would appreciate it if people would go to the microphone, because there are people that are at home and they won't hear you if you're just saying things from where you're sitting. Okay, with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Jeff. Oh.
Good evening. So I will move through the design so that we can see all the different new renderings. But it does start off with some older stuff, so I'll explain that quickly as we go. We'll take a look at the site plan, and then we'll see some elevations and renderings. So the first one is the site plan. The entryway from Massachusetts Avenue onto the police station campus is just to the right of the police station. Our canopy is located on the drive that connects over to Fletcher Avenue. It has relocated in the last HDC meeting. We actually twisted the canopy just slightly to move it away a little bit from the property line and to protect some more of the trees along that property line, as well as to work with that gas valve structure that sits over there at the corner, the upper right-hand corner of the site. So it is a single canopy structure. There's a higher level that bridges up over the parking that has to be high enough to allow emergency vehicles underneath. And then there's a lower human scale canopy that edges Fletcher Field. So we'll take a quick look at some of those views. Move forward, please. This is an elevation looking from Massachusetts Avenue towards the back. You can see the structure there to the right of the image, police station on the left. I just want to make one quick comment about renderings from our architectural firm. There's a lot of stuff that we have that we model pretty precisely. And then there's also stuff that we don't have enough information to show. I know some people have been concerned about the tree line behind the building. We've done in some new renderings, we've tried to be a little bit more precise by taking some images from Google Earth and from some photographs, as well as some information from GIS to get a little bit more realistic expression of that tree line behind there. If we move forward one more. This is a view looking in from Fletcher Avenue. You can see the canopy there on the lower right again. You can see the massive Carey Memorial behind us, behind the police station. That's in that lighter tone. And of course, the police station running to the left. And then of course, you've got the triple archway that leads you in to the parking area The arches were brought in and part of the discussions of the HDC to be a little bit reminiscent of the depot, which is of course further up the bike path from this location. It was discussed that that was sort of the other industrial incursion into the historic district. And so referencing it would make a connectivity between those two structures. Moving forward. This is one of the renderings from Fletcher Field. I've already talked a little bit about the arches. You can see the lower canopy there, and of course the police station off to the left. Moving forward. Another view coming a little bit closer to the Fletcher Avenue entryway. Moving forward. And of course, this is up at the other side of the canopy as we come in that driveway from Massachusetts Avenue, just before you turn under the canopy to head back towards Fletcher. Moving forward. This again is a rendering that we produced at the request of the Historic District Commission. They want to just get a little bit of a sense of what the farmers market would look like and how it might utilize that structure. And if you could zoomed in all the way underneath that lower canopy, you'd see that there's a great opportunity to set up some of those farmers market booths right under that lower canopy. In fact, there's some tables there with some vegetables under there. But again, it gives the idea of how that might frame the edge of Fletcher Field. Oh, go ahead and go to that. This is the similar rendering depicting how that ice rink might be utilized in Fletcher Field, and using the lower canopy as a seating area and a cover area for those who are either waiting for people who are skating or preparing to go out and skate. Moving forward. So this is a new image. We had to actually learn a new piece of software. One of my people had to learn a new piece of software because it gave us a little bit more ability to show seasonal variation in our vegetation. So this is the bike path leading in. The trees are not exactly the right species, but we got them as close as we possibly could with the tools that were available to us. We did use GIS mapping to locate the trees themselves. So this is right at the corner of the bike path, looking back towards the police station across Fletcher Field. And of course, you can see the canopy right there through the trees. If we move one more forward.
Yeah, before we go forward, can you just discuss quickly, all of these trees that are shown in this slide are trees that are remaining? Is that correct?
That is correct. These are trees that are remaining. There are some smaller trees a little bit closer to the property line that will be removed. But then there also is, we are planning on doing some additional planting of some trees along the property line. Those are not showing in this image. We might see a couple examples of those later on. So moving forward. And there's a fall image. This new software that we learned enables us to change the season a little bit. And then again, moving forward one more time, you see what it looks like when the trees are bare. And then again, of course, there are some evergreens in there, but we get some bare trees in there to depict what happens when you can see a little bit more through that tree canopy. So let's move forward one more time. This is a little bit up Fletcher Avenue, right near the corner property that sits on the corner of Fletcher Avenue and the bike path, looking across the yard. And here again, we are looking at the summer rendering from that viewpoint. And we can move forward and watch the seasons change once again. There's a fall view, same trees, just fall foliage, and then the winter view with the trees bare. And then a little bit further up the bike path, approximately near behind 31 Sherman. And again, here's looking through. There is some lower vegetation that we were not able to get all exact locations of that smaller vegetation. We did depict some of it in there. So this is a view looking approximately from that rear yard towards the canopy and out towards Fletcher Field. And of course, we can see the seasons change once again. There's bright fall colors.
So,
And
Jeff, if I go back a couple of slides,
yes, sir.
this one, and then the very next slide, you see some additional trees. Are those the new trees that are being planted?
Yes, yeah. When you flip between those two slides, yeah, we pick up some of the proposed new trees. We talked about getting some low evergreens down next to between the canopy and the bike path structure to help fill in some of that area in between there. And you see the same thing again there. They pop into the spring view or the fall view as well. And the same thing happens here again with our winter view. There we go. There they pop in. This is just another angle looking in again from that Fletcher Avenue. Again, we've got the seasonal thing here going. You do see that there is a little bit of light that transmits through these. These are called bifacial solar panels, and what they have is some translucent gaps between the actual cells themselves, and some of the light that gets reflected from below actually increases the output of these solar panels. But they also give a little bit of a nice glow underneath, so you get a little bit of light transmission under there. Moving forward, we'll go right through the seasons again. And again, this one does not depict the additional trees, but that's something that we will be looking at as we work with our landscape architect, finalizing the documents. So with that, we can have some discussion and some questions.
All right, so what we'll do is we'll try to do people who are both in the room and people online, and I'm going to try to coordinate this. Why don't you jump in first?
My name is Mike Cronin, Director of Public Facilities, and so we work with the tree committee. So we talked about some of the new species of trees that will be added to that site area. We have a landscape architect who certainly has their opinion. The tree committee we've worked with a couple of times so far in developing the species that they want to pull out. So they've identified all the trees. There's a series of them that are wrapped with red ribbon. So if you walk down the bike path right now on the left-hand side, you'll see them. 4 of them are 4 inches smaller in diameter. And there are a couple of the trees that they think that are damaged that they would like to have pulled out. And there's one that's an invasive species that they asked to have pulled out. So we're complying with their requests. They asked us to save a number of the trees that were there, and we've done that. There are 3 large pine trees that are a little further down. They asked us to save those. We reorganized the site to accommodate that. And then there are 3 honey locust trees that are right on the corner. Actually, on the back side of 31 Germany, if you look straight across, there are 3 honey locusts that are fairly mature trees. We actually moved the whole structure a little bit in order to accommodate keeping those trees. They're kind of funky looking. They're pretty green in the summertime, but we are keeping those trees. We did a lot of work to try to maintain that. The species that we will plant, we'll work with them to make sure they're the right species for the right climate and the right shade cover. Whether they're evergreen or deciduous, we haven't quite determined yet, but we will default to their direction on that.
So can I ask for clarification? Are the trees that you're mentioning, you're pulling out, you taken out of the pictures that you were showing?
They're already out.
They're already out of this picture.
Correct.
So if there are any questions specifically that somebody would like to ask, direct them either to the architect, Judge McElroy. Sorry, Jeff.
Is it possible to scroll through the images so we can see them? Please?
We were scrolling through the images.
Okay, it was just very fast, so it's difficult to kind of get a sense of where we were at the time. So thank you. Sorry. Just
I've raised your hand.
I see that.
Okay.
I'm going to see if you go ahead, please. And I'm going to see if I can set it up so that I can control.
Okay, so, so Eric, I live on the corner of Vinebrook and Waltham, 72 Waltham Street. Just a few questions. You can take the questions and I'll just sit down and maybe you can answer them. I guess the first thing is, first of all, I appreciate an open hearing like this. I am for renewable energy, but I'm not for renewable energy when it takes up green space or perhaps intrudes on a historical area, because I live in the historic district and I've always been a participant in the historical code of the town. So I'm challenged there. The first question, and I do appreciate the James Cameron avatar looking photos of trees, which makes it look good, but you know, that's an image rendering. The first thing is, do we know how many kilowatts will be produced by the solar garage? And the second question is public safety going electric to warrant power production local to the site? That's my first question.
So let me answer your first
Yeah.
question. The whole system will produce 330, give or take 330,000 kW.
Okay, and what is the total panel area of the solar garage?
Jeff, do you have the square footage of the, just the canopy?
I will pull that up.
Okay, and part and parcel of that question is, are you considering putting the panels on the top of Cary Hall so you don't have to build the solar?
So Cary Hall is in the process of obtaining a new roof, and it's a slate roof, and you can't hang the solar panels off the slate roof.
But you could
Bring it and turn it up.
pay the solar panel, you designed it correctly.
We've gone through that process with HT.
I can't hear you.
No, nobody can hear him. Sounds off.
Well, his microphone is off.
Our mic is open, so
They asked us to mute it.
I know.
Okay,
Well,
now I think people can hear us. I think it's fixed now.
Jeff, can you hear me on this?
Yes.
All right.
I missed your last question. If you don't mind repeating that?
Oh, no, you answered. You answered.
The grass?
It's gonna take grass. Okay.
It is going to stay grass.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, I believe
I'm sorry about the interruption. I was just.
Yeah, no worries.
People can hear you.
I believe there's plans to both improve the surface and put in irrigation so that we have an improved looking park.
So Fletcher Field was a little bit of a mud pit and had a little bit of a dishing effect to it. So what we want to do is we're taking all the topsoil off, readjusting the soils below, adjusting the quality of the soils, building it back up. We'll actually have a little bit of a crown to it so that it drains properly, and we're going to irrigate it.
Okay, with that, I'm gonna have Howard Claw speak. He's got his hand up. He's online.
Ask him to unmute.
Okay, ask him to unmute. You would unmute. There you go. Go ahead.
I was
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Pitney. I live at 19 Sherman Street. I'd like to know the height of the canopy that we're talking about. And how it would look in relationship to the size of the trees that exist along the bike path now.
So right now our design is showing the very top highest point of the panels, which sit on a slight slope at 20 feet. The renderings here are trying to depict the relationship between the size of the trees and the canopy. The trees are, some of them are quite mature and are larger, significantly larger than the height of our canopy. And if I may just add one, I was looking up that information. The area of our canopy is about 14,000 square feet.
Thank you.
For the person online, the view that you're seeing on the screen right now, you should see a fall picture, and that is from the backside of 31 Sherman, just for your perspective.
No, what?
Okay, they're completed, so.
Sally Lehman, 6 Sherman Street. So a question for you. I just became aware of this project recently, and I don't know that a lot of the neighborhood and the community is aware of it and the details. What are the goals of the project in terms of reducing carbon footprint? Is it for the whole town? Is it for specifically town buildings? Because I want to hear about that, but I also want to know, are you open? How wedded are you to the idea of having a covered parking structure there? If the community were willing to work with you to figure out other solutions to achieve your goals, because honestly, like, we've lived for 33 years on Sherman Street. We love that open space. We like to see the sky, and a parking structure just feels so counter to what our historic district feels like. I'm so surprised the HTC approved it. So would you be willing to work with us to come up with other solutions to achieve your goals?
So the town has has two things. One, we have a town meeting vote that has encouraged us to consider the climate change in all of the decisions we make. We also have a integrated building design and construction policy, which encourages us to build net zero buildings, and we have the net zero goals that the town has established for our town buildings. So for the last couple of buildings that we built, the LCP, the Lexington Children's Place, Hastings Elementary School, and the fire station to some extent, where we could get solar panels on the fire station where the HTC would allow us to actually put them. We put as much as we possibly can on that building. On this building, we have solar panels on the roof, correct, as well as the canopy that's proposed. We are having the building set up so that it's available for type 3 chargers, so that we can convert our police cruiser fleet to electric vehicles in the future. And this building is designed around that. It's designed around having not only solar panels, but also having batteries, so that we can have solar storage on the property as well. And so the building is designed, so right now I believe we have 95% of the building's energy use will be solar, and it will be an all electric building. We are certainly designing all of our buildings to that extent. And as far as working with people to come up with alternative solutions, that's really part of the role of Sustainable Lexington and the design teams that we have and the policies that the select board and town meeting have approved. I'm not sure what we would do. There's not large areas of town that the town owns or controls that we could put solar canopies up or solar fields up. So I'm not quite sure what else the town would do to achieve our net zero goals.
Jim, we can follow up on that. So as the town manager just mentioned, the last two buildings that we built, LCP and Hastings, they're net zero buildings. In addition, the fire station, which was the last building that we built, is not net zero because we just don't have the footprint. We would typically put canopies on the backside of that property, but because there's, when we constructed that building on the backside, we built a stair tower for training. And in order to use a hook and ladder, you have to be able to raise the ladder up to a certain height, and as you can imagine, it's about 40 feet tall. Canopies just didn't work in that environment. Believe me, we looked at the whole backside of that and tried to add solar panels, but because it's a training facility as well as the main station, it was unable to take canopies. The cemetery building that's being constructed right now, that's in the process, it's already designed in order to receive solar panels in that facility as well. So as soon as we finish the construction, we're going to roll into solar panel installation in that facility as well. So it is the design intent. It's been around since 2019, and we continue to build buildings with the effort, including the high school, which is coming, with the effort of being a net zero facility.
So with that, hang on just a second. We need to have somebody online that has their hand up. So Jill Smillo.
Yeah, I have a question. My husband, who's standing next to me, also has a question. I'm curious whether there's been any conversation with some businesses in town, like, for example, what you were just saying about the fire station. I'm wondering if there's ever a conversation with like Stop and Shop in their parking lot to see if there's a way to use their open space to be able to canopy an area that wouldn't be as intrusive, maybe as other areas. So I'm just curious if, number one, you have that conversation with partners in town, and then my husband.
Yes, Howard Brick. My question is that requirement or that goal of making buildings, net zero or as close to net zero as possible. Why wasn't that consideration taken into account in terms of the new roof for Cary Hall? And why was the decision made to go with a slate roof that would not be suitable for solar? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll answer the first question. So we have actually had discussions with Stop and Shop, as well as the drugstore and the Walgreens and a couple of other businesses in that area about creating a microgrid in that area that would have not only solar, but also have battery backup, so that in the future, if we were able to get to an agreement with all of them, because it would also include the fire station and some of the other properties behind the fire station, excuse me, to provide enough electricity and storage so that we would have a emergency operations center, food availability, and a drugstore, as well as a Starbucks that would be available during any major power outage in town, so that people would have availability. And the deli across the street would also be included, so there'd be a deli here. But that way, there would be an opportunity for, in a townwide power outage, that there would be an ongoing operations in that area where we'd have the availability of electricity there, regardless of the power outage. So we have been in conversations with them. The problem we have is that Stop and Shop actually owns the parcel where Walgreens is, the mother company, and they have numerous different levels of their organization, and trying to have meetings with them and Walgreens and the people who own the condominium business park over there. There's like 30 different owners, and getting Eversource at a meeting at the same time has been very difficult. And so other things have become a priority over the last year. And so that has sort of gone by the wayside, but it's something that the town is still working towards.
And as far as the roof on Cary Memorial Building, it is currently a slate roof, and HDC wants us to maintain a slate roof from an appropriateness standpoint. So the perspective that they're looking for is to maintain that look. So we have been unable to find a solar system that works. It's also an east-facing roof, not a south-facing roof. So it's not the most ideal location for us to put solar, and we're not aware of a system that's available for slates.
So just a follow-up question on roofs and town property. Does the Hadley building have solar on top of it?
So when that building was built in 2007,
A modern
they
building.
did two things. They built a green roof on that roof instead of putting solar on it. In the garage area, they did not put enough steel in order for us to support. However, we're in the process of evaluating that with an engineer in order for us to put solar panels on that roof. So we're looking to increase the steel load in that building in order for us to put a weighted system on that roof.
So just roughly looking at the geo map here, that looks to be bigger than the garage area, the solar garage you're wanting to put downtown in the historic district. Could you hold off on this solar garage until after you evaluate that? And then you'd actually recoup that same level of energy. Just a follow-up.
Yeah, the plan is basically to do solar on both buildings, correct, long term.
Hi, my name is Elspeth Khan and I live at 27 Sherman Street. I appreciate the feedback on the other options around the town about where we can place solar panels, but we're kind of losing sight of the fact that we really want to discuss this massive building right here that you're trying to construct. And as an abutter to this system, I'm appalled that you've taken the time to actually ask Stop and Shop and all the other people around the town that whether they would take their solar panels, but you haven't actually asked people that are in the neighborhood what they thought about this situation. So appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback. In terms of the trees that we're seeing on these rendering drawings, I see that they're actually a good sort of piece higher than this 20-foot construction. And I'm just wondering if you've taken into consideration what you're going to do in terms of the time it takes for those trees to grow to your 30, 40 foot high, as your drawings have shown, between then and now, or in the next couple of months when we see this constantly from our views of this 20-foot building. Because, you know, the reality is not real here, right? The pictures that you're showing are very high trees with lots of foliage, and they don't really exist.
These are the existing trees.
Okay, so they're not going to be higher than the 20-foot structure that you're going to fit in. If you look back to your other buildings, there's not going to be that many trees. There are not currently that many trees on the bike path that are that high that are basically going to cover this construction.
Go to slide 1, 3 really. Keep going.
So you think
Okay,
that there are trees?
This rendering right here. So this was an original rendering. That was the computer system that we had. Those are not accurate trees. I think Jeff
Correct.
covered that in the very
Right, thank
beginning.
you for saying that they're not
Those are
accurate
not
trees.
accurate.
Right,
So
so,
in the later renderings, we did GIS trees, and we tried to match trees and species with the software package that's available. They don't have a honey locust that's available in the software package, so I couldn't.
so now you see trees here,
Those
with
are-
lots of open spaces right
actual.
here. So we will actually see this canopy because those trees are not necessarily going to cover it, okay? That's my point.
That's before the new trees are actually installed.
Right, so you're gonna sort of like implant 20, 30 foot high trees?
No, there'll be 12 footers, give or take. We haven't-
Right,
we
so
haven't
that's the
picked out
point. So that's the
species.
point, is that they're gonna take a long time to actually grow and actually give us a coverage so that we don't see this building. So we will see this building for the next, what, 3, 4, 5 years?
Perhaps.
Right, okay, thank you. 15 years, okay, thank you. I'm not a tree expert. So I'm just trying to make the point that this is not the reality of what we're going to see in the summer when you finish your building. So to that next
It
point.
is this is the reality. This is the real trees that are there now that we actually were able to take from a computer program, upload into the system and reflect in an image for you.
I don't think we do see that. Having walking that bike path many, many times, I don't think we see that many trees. But to the point I'm going to try and make is that 20-foot structure, which doesn't necessarily need to be like that, is probably going to have lights and stuff underneath it, which will then reflect back to the rest of the community along the bike path.
So there's a very significant light ordinance that requires us to have it stop up at the property line. And the light, it's a half-a-foot candle. It's a half-a-foot candle, which is the light requirements that is underneath the structure, and it'll aim straight down.
And the brightness of it across what the spans of the construction
It will not be leaked, won't come onto the bike path. You won't see it from the bike path.
You won't see it from the bike path,
But it will be illuminated.
but it will be illuminated and lighting in the,
It will
in
only
the
be
nighttime.
needed. So it'll have a dimmer switch on it. So it basically will run on motion detection. So when no one's under it, it'll be very, very dim. And then at a certain point in time, we have the light controls will shut it off. It'll be off, no matter what time, and no matter what time somebody drives under it. So there'll be a certain period of time, like the rest of the building, the property that has the lights that are on the sconces on the building, they have a certain timeline on them. And at a certain point, they're gonna shut off, same as the structure here. So after a
So
certain,
people
after
walking
dusk,
underneath it will
we'll trigger it.
trigger it, okay.
It'll turn on for their safety, of course, right, for pedestrian traffic, and then once they get in their car in the driveway, 5 minutes later, it'll go back to dim.
So people that are in properties behind that will obviously see the impact of the lights going on and off. Because the trees are not going to cover that, and then it's going to be so high, it's higher than the heights of our fences. It's going to be shining into our backyards of our properties.
It will not be shining into the backyards of your properties.
The light will emit over into the backyard of our properties. So why can't we, in terms of a construction idea, have two different lines? Why do we have to have this very, very high building with this large spans of solar panels? Why don't you have two lower buildings where you can have your solar panels?
So quite frankly, one of the reasons why is because we have to get DPW vehicles underneath there because we have.
If you had two, I understand that, but if you actually didn't to cover that empty space, so why can't you have a road in between?
Can I answer your question?
Sure, why didn't you answer my
I'm
question?
trying to, and you keep speaking.
I'm
over
done,
me.
actually. You interrupted me when I was actually speaking, but carry on.
The reason why is because public works vehicles need to get underneath the canopies, and even if you have two separate ones, they still need to get underneath them to clear the parking spaces. And then we need the vehicle height, and we would not get the amount of solar coverage that we would get with this structure.
Two
So-
lower
so
panels.
So fire engines have to go underneath the car parking space, is that what you're saying?
Fire engines and DPW vehicles both need to be able to get underneath that.
Interesting.
Anybody else?
There's one at home, so I'm gonna have people at home who have questions.
They might still have their hand up from last time.
Mr. Cloth, or this, do you?
Hi there, Howard Clough, 19 Sherman again. I applaud the town for wanting to do the right thing regarding the police station project. You know that expression, the 800-pound elephant in the room that nobody's talked about? Well, in this case, it's the 300-foot stainless steel communications tower, which is right in our backyard. I'm just appalled that the Historic District Commission let this thing go. Our sense is this belongs in a non-residential neighborhood. You've got one out at Hartwell Avenue. I don't know why the thing isn't put there, but to stick it where it's so extremely visible. In November, one of the cranes that was being used to construct the fabric of the police station had its arm all the way extended, and I happened to take a photograph of that. It's just humongous. Sitting on our back porch. I have a photograph of that. I planned to come tonight, but the weather dissuaded me and persuaded us to watch this on Zoom. I don't know if you could share the screen. I'd be glad to show you the picture I took, but it's just awful. So what can be done about moving the tower somewhere else, not in a residential neighborhood?
Okay, so the tower is being placed there. So first I want to say that that's not part of this project, and it's not even a town project. It's something that's done by being put in by AT&T, and it's an agreement. The town went through a process in 2016 and signed an agreement with AT&T to place the tower there. And they've been waiting until the town did the police station project in order to place the tower there. And so it's not related to this project whatsoever, but it's been on hold for 7 years now, or 8 years, 7 years.
So we've been living here since 2005, and I don't recall ever being consulted about where the tower would be, what it was going to be made of, and what it would look like
From our point of view.
from our point of view. And even frankly, from Massachusetts Avenue, if you take a look at the first page of the architectural renderings, frankly, it looks like that tower is giving a finger to anyone approaching on Mass Avenue. I mean, I just can't imagine how this got passed. We certainly weren't consulted or apprised or invited to share our opinions.
So let me go back to the old police station. There was already a 60-foot tower attached to that building. Those of you who may remember, it's in the backside next to the garage. It was triangular in shape. It was open format. It was too short for them to be able to do their work. So we have dead spots in the town right now. We have police cruisers that are out there that sometimes we have police folks using their cell phones to make calls back in because they don't have radio receptivity. The objective of the tower is twofold. AT&T said, we'll build it. You can have the top 30 feet in order to put your communication towers on it. So if they're still paying rent, they're still buying the property, they're putting up the whole structure and the whole 9 yards. But in order for us to communicate across the town needs to hit 3 points. And if Chief Sensabaugh is online, I'd love to hear from you. But I believe there are 3 points. Avalon Bay, the Route 2 tower that you can see on 128. And there's one other in the other corner of the other corner of the town, and I forget what it is off the top of my head, but there's 3 different, the water tower. So it needs to do line of sight. So it can't have any trees in its way, it can't have any buildings in its way. So therefore it needs to be taller. This particular part of town is a little bit of a dish compared to up by my building 201. It needs to be within 300 feet of the building. That's
300 feet of the building. Well, why isn't it right next to the building? Why is it in the backyard of 19 Sherman Street?
So we went through a process with HDC with, I forget how many public meetings that we had about this. And this particular location was one of many locations that they looked at. There was a location adjacent to the building, which was basically about 20 feet closer to the building than it is located today. There was one location that was near Carey Memorial Building. There was another location about 55 feet more to the west of where it is now. This was the site that was selected by a combination of the committees in town and boards in the town.
So are you suggesting that we were consulted as an abutting neighborhood and we didn't respond?
That did not come out of my mouth, sir. Well,
No, I know that, but that's the suggestion, because if we're appalled at the way it looks now, we would have been appalled in 2016 as well.
So I believe there was a previous administration that was here in 2016. They brought a fire truck out here, extended the ladder as far as they could, and a balloon to get to 120 feet. And apparently there was a whole host of folks that were there to observe that. I wasn't here at that time. I wasn't here to witness that. My understanding is that that's the process that started to identify how tall the structure was really going to be. I wish I could tell you more about that.
You saw the crane was mounted, we saw the crane.
Yeah, the crane's tall.
That was frightening.
Crane's tall.
So if it's,
The monopole is going to be 120 feet.
and I would assume that
can't- I
because
can't
Hampton's
sugarcoat
pretty
that.
close, it's gonna have a flashing light on it.
No flashing on.
So the planes will not.
It's not on the
have
flight
to-
path from Hanscom.
It's not on the flight path. Interesting.
So are you, just to finish this, are you suggesting that this is already baked in the cake and there's nothing we can do about it?
It is, it's an agreement that the town signed in 2016. It predates both Mr. Cronin and myself.
Well, all I can say is shame on all of us for not doing this then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Claus. Mr. Falzone.
Put your hand down.
I did, it's not me, huh?
Oh,
Hi, this is Chris Falzone. I live at 8 Sheridan Street. I've been getting, emails from my neighbors, about projects that the town is taking on that they're really not aware of. And Howard just spoke a lot about this, but it's really concerning. I've lived here for 30 years. I've lived here my whole life. I plan to live here my whole life. I plan to live here more than most of you, right? How did the town reach out how can so many of my neighbors, I mean, I moved away for college and stuff, but I moved back. So maybe I wasn't here, but how can all of them go so unaware of you making so many changes to our neighborhood? I got another email a couple months ago. Oh, it looks like they're cutting down trees next to the neighborhood. How did they find out? They found out because they were marked for being cut down. You know, and then how do you find out about this? Oh, you're springing a canopy on us, right? And I don't appreciate, you know, the way that you guys are responding to some of my neighbors. It seems like you guys are hell bent on this going through, and you're really not you're not like sensitive to your neighbors' considerations. Yes, you work here, we live here, right? I really think that you need to put in a little bit more effort to engage with the community. You know, how about every time like someone brings up a good point, that the building manager doesn't just shut it down and say it was just resolved many years ago, previous administration. How about you go say like, oh, that's a good point. You know, maybe we should take that into consideration. You know, like you could be a little bit more open. And then if you can't give a good reason or a good explanation of how you reached out, how can you go forward with voting on this knowing that you did not reach out properly? And I apologize for my my level of heightened amped, but I'm really concerned about this. So I really appreciate you listening to me. That's really important. I really appreciate you listening to me, and I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, so the HDC uses a process where they send notification to abutters within 100 feet. They use the police station project parcel, and our GIS mapping generates an abutters list, and we can dictate how many feet we want that abutters list to be. The HDC's process is to use 100 feet. And so a lot of the abutters on the other side of the bike path did get notification. If I could, please. The two houses right on Fletcher Ave on the other side of the, and I think the first or second house on Sherman did not. People across the street on the other side of Sherman did not get notification because they're outside of the 100-foot abutter zone. And I can show you the map. I'm happy to, I could probably find the map and put it up on the screen. For this meeting, what we did is we did both the parcel where the police station project is and the parking lot in Fletcher Field or Fletcher Park as our area, and then we expanded it to 200 feet around that area in order to have this meeting today. And so that's, and there was obviously all of our public meetings are also posted online. So, you know, I think that Mr. Falzone was talking about both the tower project, which does predate both Mr. Cronin and I, so we can't really really speak to the process that went through at that point in time. On this process, I know that the HDC has been holding meetings for a year. The select board has had meetings last year. Well, 2 or 3 years ago, we were going forward with the police station project and we put it on hold. But all of these designs were talked about at that point in time. The solar canopy looked different, but it's been talked about in public meetings now for about 3 years. And so it may be a surprise to you, but it has been talked about for a number of years now. And these presentations are not necessarily new.
Next week.
Please go to the microphone, please.
So, my name is Bill Erickson. I live at 31 Sherman Street. Thanks to the rangers, love the trees, which that's what I saw in the fall. But anyway, I'm an architect and I do a lot of, I have a lot of projects that I have to have the HDC with. So I'm very familiar with the HDC. And this process is totally flawed. And in fact, to the point where I will be writing a letter to the town council for guidance. The drawings on the HDC's website, that the HDC has a process where the public is entitled to see what the designs that they're reviewing are. And you go to Viewpoint Cloud, you make an account, you go to you put in their address, you get this thing. As of today, this afternoon, they do not have this design. on their, that's not what the public gets to see. They get to see design from last August, which shows a very different, canopy. So I've been paying attention. And frankly, like there's the bus shelter, they kind of have that on hearings all the time. I just assumed this was one of these things that was just getting diddled around. And so I didn't choose to spend my time, tuning into the meetings. But how can they have voted for a design that was not publicly accessible to the average person? So, that's a serious flaw. And I've subsequently watched every meeting from the Lex Media Group. And you're sort of putting the blame of everything here on the HTC, whereas if the neighborhood had gotten engaged in the process and could have gone to the meetings and expressed their opinions, we have this nice step down human thing to Fletcher Park. We've got nothing human to the neighborhood, nothing. And it's really distressing to me that, because I've gone through the ringer, just like this good architect has gone through the ringer with the HTC. I know exactly, I know exactly what he's gone through. But again, I think the process is horrible and that the community wasn't involved. I'd like to show a couple of observations I made, because you may not be interested, but I'm sure my neighbor. And and actually the renderings that were shown tonight show this quite well as well. Originally at the very first presentation of the HTC, there was not a giant, there was an option for not having a giant canopy across the whole thing, of keeping the center lane open, which would have allowed for these lower human scale canopies. This is not a canopy, this is called a pavilion. And again, had we been informed that of the direction the thing was going, we could have come and expressed our opinion. But this is a sense between those two kind of views of what happens to our view corridor of the sky. And so you can see that, and I'm happy to send the AutoCAD file to the architect. You can verify the dimensions. We're going to lose our entire view to the sky, and you see it in the renderings. You don't see, you just see the shadow of this giant canopy. A number of times at the HCC meetings, they were frustrated that the town didn't ever look at this in a holistic way. They didn't present to them what was going on with Fletcher Field, how it related to this whole thing, had a lot to do with the discussion about the wing that going to Mass Avenue. And what it made me think, had it not been labeled the police canopy, that had been labeled maybe Fletcher Park canopy, and we do have the farmer's market there, why couldn't we do something like a nice loggia that went around the park, was a low scale, human scale. What's that? Well, you look at that option, but
HTC said no.
they didn't say no. I've watched all the hearings. They did not say no. What I'll do? Here's the deal. We have an option of we can come together and work together. We could come up with a damn proud solution that satisfied all your energy needs, made the town proud, made the neighborhood very happy. Or we can just go to a letter war to all the town, God bless the town meeting members, where it's a zero sum, one of us wins and one of us loses. So why do you want to go down that route? Why don't we just say, hey, let's get the stakeholders together. Let's get the farmers market, let's get the HTC, let's get the sustainability committee. Let's get, whoever, you all feel is the appropriate parties. And let's sit down and see if we can't hash out an agreement. there's two HTC, I'll, watch these bloody things again and mark down all the times so that nobody else has to sit through the whole hearing. And I'm happy to send it to anybody who wants to know. I'll send it to all the town meeting members, but there isn't that unanimous, one HTC member was very animate that, the wing going to Mass Avenue would cover up the side view of this wonderful building. Well, there's not an entrance there, and the side is already getting covered up by cars that are parked there. So why couldn't the little canopy be there? I don't, the logic is just not there. And so, again, it's your choice, or it's a select person's choice or somebody's, that it's either we're just gonna go to war and fight over the thing. And, we've got all the email addresses and we could just fire off letters or we could work together, get all the parties together. I'm not saying this is the solution, but there is an alternative solution that gives you all the area you need. And there may be one that's better than this. And I understand how it's going to be, but I think if there had been the opportunity, and it wasn't because it was not properly shown, it's still not today. You can look on, you can go online and go through the whole process that the town tells you to do, and you're not going to see this design. So it's kind of your choice. Is it war or cooperation?
Can I ask you a question on the videos that you watched? Was this design shown during the HTC meetings?
I watched all the videos after I found out the Board of Selectmen hearing where I gave my neighbor, I printed it off from the HTC site and said, oh, this is what they're doing. And then my neighbor Ted says, that's not what they're doing. This is what they're doing. He got I think he got a copy from you. And it's like, well, what's going on here? So again, there's some flaws here and, we're going to have to be accountable to the fact that, and we're not trying to sit here and say, we don't want this in our backyard. We'd like to work with you. We'd like to achieve something everybody could be proud of. But again, you gotta say, yeah, I'm willing to, go to the dance with you.
Yeah, are there any other questions?
Hi, I'm Ted Page. Thank you everyone for coming out on this snowy night. I live at 6 Fletcher Avenue with my wife Nancy, who many of you may know. We lived there for 30 years. Also grew up on Oakland Street. But whether we've lived in town our whole lives and raised our kids here, or whether we're absolutely new, like our folks, other folks in the neighborhood, it's like we've had a common bond with each other as neighbors. And we do the right things for each other as neighbors. 20 years ago, the town had wanted to pave the land at the end of Fletcher Ave. Some of the folks here were there. Cindy Savage alerted me to this. And we worked with the town to come up with a different solution. Stu Hurst, who's here tonight, is a civil engineer. He drew up an alternate plan for the town to see how you can get 20 extra parking spaces without paving the land. We worked together. I spoke at town meeting, the select board worked with us. That's now called Fletcher Field or Fletcher Park. We're here tonight, and I am in a very uncomfortable and strange position of opposing a solar plant of this scale after working for 20 years in the clean energy sector. I've helped one of the largest wind energy companies in the United States grow, worked with Blue Wave Solar in Boston, our Real to Climate Declaration for Sirius, which 1,700 global corporations signed, urging President Obama to take action on climate change, which he did. I'm against this. Why am I against this? It's simply because of what Bill talked about, Bill Erickson, the scale, 20 feet high. Did some additional research on canopies of this nature, where they have been successfully done, and they can play an important role in the state of Massachusetts and sustainability efforts, is the UMass campus, the Staples Center. The proposed 20-foot canopy would be totally appropriate at the Burlington Mall. It is not appropriate abutting our properties in the middle of our neighborhood. But this is not about abutters. This is a town-wide issue, I believe, that is about scale. There are some in town, many who voted, by the way, for the override for the police station, who are now shocked at just how big it is. And it's because it's very hard to capture in a rendering, despite the best efforts of the best architects, to show just how enormous these things can be. 20 feet high, abutting the bike path, abutting our homes in the middle of our neighborhood. This is as large as an overpass on the Mass Pike. It is not appropriate for the space. But I totally agree with what Bill is saying. If we work together, and this is a message for the select board and any town meeting member who's listening. All we are asking as a community and as a neighborhood is to delay the vote on Article 16I, which despite our best efforts is apparently still going before town meeting, even though this process was flawed. Delay a vote for a year. Let's work together. Bill has done a preliminary plan. We've started a neighborhood working group. We're smarter together than any one of us individually. We can meet the town's sustainability objectives, but do it in a way that is at a human scale. The center of this structure, which is 20 feet high, doesn't have to be there. You can have two smaller human scale and a fire engine can go right between it. We can achieve our goals. And all I would ask, and I hope the chief of police is listening here, like in our neighborhood, and this may sound corny and this may sound old fashioned. I am old fashioned. When we have a neighbor come in, like Nancy makes cookies, we bring them to people's houses. We brought cookies to the police station a few years ago because they're our neighbors. And all I'm asking is that we maintain that tradition. We want to be good neighbors and we want the town to be good neighbors with us. So this is not in opposition to solar. It's not even in opposition to having a solar parking area. But we can do something in collaboration with the farmers market, with our neighbors, with you, and everyone who's listening. We can come up with a better solution for this. So in closing, I would just say, I really hope this meeting tonight is a listening opportunity for everyone. And it is good that we've had it. But this meeting should have happened 2 years ago. And we have to recognize that sometimes, despite everyone's good intentions, mistakes are made. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward. How do we solve a problem? And we can. And so I'm just asking, I'm imploring you, please don't do this. Let's work together. And the select board should put a pause on this. It shouldn't even be voted on at town meeting right now. This has to be corrected. So I want to keep it positive here and just urge you to be of mind to set this aside and give us 1 year. Lexington has been around for what, 350 years? I've only been here for 50. But can we have 1 year? 1 year to work together. Can we do that? That's a question for you.
I can't answer that.
We'll talk separately. We can figure this out. I'm convinced we can figure this out. Anyone wants to talk with me? I'm here. I'm easy to spot. I'm a high-rise structure all by myself. So thank you for your time. And I just wanted to see if we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Sally Blyberg.
Thank you. I have a question. If we do delay this project by a year to try to work out a solution that everybody's happy with, what would be the extra cost to the town due to inflation, the cost of materials and labor going up? and not being able to sync it with the current construction going on at the police station? Thank you.
Mike, I'll let you.
So the escalation number that we're using right now, given this really uncertain conditions, we're using about 6% a year in the short term. Those numbers change as you go further out, but in the short term, it's about a year. In addition, we have the site contractor prepared to begin the excavation work, which he already has to do a series of excavations in the exact same area. So we're basically taking advantage of that so we can put in some of the footings at the same time that we're doing the excavation for some of the underground infiltration work. So we're taking advantage of that cost effectiveness. Materials, if we weren't waiting for this one whole year, which is possible, of course, that'd be a very separate project. The police station would not be net zero in year one. So it's roughly about $100,000 of electricity that's going to be spent in that building as an operational cost in a year. The 335 kW offsets that to a zero. So that operational cost will then become to be materialized. So that's about $100,000 on top of that. 6% on top of the $3.4 million is a cost. I don't have that off the top of my head, $180,000, 3.4. So there's some real dollars associated with that. So those two numbers alone are almost $300,000. Those are some rough costs off the top of my head.
Next one, more question. When do you anticipate the police station is actually going to be done and function?
So it is,
If you would repeat.
oh, sorry. So the question in the field, in the audience was, what is the expected completion date for the existing police station? And we expect that to be, they're moving in by June 1st of 2024.
Which is a year away.
Is a year away.
So that's roughly less than 0.2% of the town's budget. That escalation.
If you have that now. Sure.
Well, I mean, you have to do math if you're using the numbers, so. I'm just trying to just say relatively 300,000, big number, but relatively not a big.
Evaluation of properties.
Yeah.
And the structure. Yeah. Whether we consider that. The evaluation of our properties because of the 20-foot structure of blocking light into our gardens. I mean,
Which impacts tax revenue
yeah. Exactly.
and interest rates might go down.
Sure. Just a quick follow-up point is, the police station is gonna be around for a year. Non-existent police station in town is not burning electricity, so waiting a year, 1 year, again, 1 year, let's work together. It's not gonna materially impact the town's budget. The other thing is, there are numerous companies that have been in development in the clean energy sector, which are just starting to get products out in the market. Tesla was one of the earliest that has the Tesla solar shingles that look more historic. They are currently not installing on commercial buildings, but there's other competitors coming on the market. So we are at the early stages of what in the energy sector is being called the energy transition, going from fossil fuels to clean energy, right? But it takes time. These companies are just not quite there, but they will be. The other consideration here, and a reason why waiting a year can help us, is that the vast majority of solar components, the actual polysilicon cells, which are used to make the PV panels, 97% of them are made in China. Right, so think about that. If we make an investment right now, unless this is sourced in some extraordinary magical way, we're putting up Chinese-made products in the town where the birthplace of American liberty. From the company, the one country in the world which is flying spying balloons over the state of Montana. We're putting our investment at risk given the geopolitical situation. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, which has been passed, which is great, they're spurring a lot of production of these solar components here in the US. It takes time for those to come online, even with the investment. A year or two, more of these factories are going to be here. If this is where the revolution started, let's have a revolution in supporting American workers, products made in the United States, in states like Georgia, that we put up in our town. We gain nothing by rushing into this. 1 year. That's all we're asking for. And I will work with the town. I'll work with the town's head of sustainability, who I thought was great. Everyone here is totally reasonable. We're not NIMBY opponents. This is not a NIMBY issue. This is like, what is the right thing for this town to scale appropriately, transition into the future without losing our character and without losing neighborhood values. That's what this is about.
Okay, I don't see anybody else online with their hands up. Does anybody else have any other comments? All right.
Somebody.
Oh, Mr. Belcom raised his hand. Okay, Mr. Belcom or Belzone?
Belzone.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak again. And I appreciate you answering my question earlier about how you reached out to my neighbors. I don't really know much about HDCs and the groups and the way the town is really formed or how you guys do this. But now that this has happened in my neighborhood, I'm definitely going to become more aware and more of a participant. But after hearing all of us, my question would be, did you think that the town made a good effort to reach out? After you hear from all of us, like how we feel or some of us, I don't want to speak for everyone, how I feel blindsided, and I feel that some other people feel blindsided. Like, do you think what the town currently does is enough? Because it seems like if this many people in this neighborhood were unaware, like in such a smart town like Lexington, it just doesn't really add up for me. That was one. And then so when you said like you started to plan like the police building, believe this was the facilities manager, when you planned and started building, a structure to be net carbon neutral like the police station, and you say like, oh, $365,000 a year if we don't make it net neutral, well, what's the cost of the net, like, putting in the net neutral? But then also it's just, why did you start building the building without having the other piece already approved that would make it net neutral? It seems like you started building a net neutral building without having all the net neutral pieces approved. That is it. Thank you.
It was proposed that way from the very beginning. And through numerous public meetings, it was discussed that we were going forward with the building itself last year at town meeting, and that we would be going forward with the solar canopy the following year. And so it's been discussed that way. Your initial question on whether or not I feel the town has done, or we feel the town has done outreach on this. There has been a lot of public discussion on this for a number of years. Do I think that residents sometimes have a responsibility to make sure that they're aware of what's going on? Yes, I do. We can't invite, there could be people 300 feet away that did not get an abutters notice for this meeting, and they're not aware right now. And so I do think that there's a responsibility on both everybody as a property owner and a resident to know what's going on in the community they live in. And Don McKenna has commented.
To jump in there for a second. So, Mr. Belzone, do I think that we do everything right? I don't. Do we make mistakes? You bet. We absolutely do. Could we fix the process and make it a little more engaging? Of course we can. And I think we hear you. We hear the feedback from the folks. I think there's a process that needs to be identified and maybe polished a little bit. So we appreciate the feedback and we can get better.
Right, Don McKenna.
Don McKenna, Precinct 6 Town Meeting Member. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little bit low. If you can get closer to whatever microphone you're using, that would be helpful.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I want to just respond to a couple of things. I am somebody who tries to get involved and tries to follow everything I can. And I have some different takes on some of the comments that have been made based on my understanding. And I think this goes back to the point of, I'm not sure that I agree with Ted Page that we should delay this for a year, but I do agree that this should not be voted on at this year's town meeting. I don't think it's ready. I don't think the public process has been sufficient. And one of the things that I heard tonight for the first time is that for some reason, a policy that we always had, that anybody who is getting abutters notices were 300 feet away, at some point got changed. I've been to a lot of those meetings. I didn't know you were only notifying 100 foot people, that, people within 100 feet. That's just different. The other thing I heard is about getting to net zero. My understanding of that policy is that it was to strive for net zero. It wasn't net zero at any cost. And I think what you've heard is a real concern from people about this particular area. And as I've mentioned to some of you on the call, but certainly Ted knows that that process that Ted described 20 years ago when we looked to preserve Fletcher Park, I was actively involved in that. And that's how Ted and I, as adults, became more engaged. And this is the town conscience land. Okay. And this was to be our open space. And so I believe that we should be doing something in terms of solar, but as a town meeting member, what we were told last year is that we were going to separate the solar from the police station project so that we could investigate more, figure out what the best solutions are, and then bring it back to town meeting. And so, yes, bringing it back to town meeting may have been an expectation, but as you've heard here, and other people have explained, there has not been enough public process about this. And for those who are on this call who haven't listened to all the select board meetings that I attend, I have raised a concern about the HDC process in other situations. This is just another example of that. And just today, I sent out a notice to town meeting members, and who's very good at finding things online, could not find a link to this. And when I looked on the town's web page, and you go to the bottom of the town's website, it said public meetings. So I quickly looked under public meetings and I saw the school committee meeting. I did not see any kind of link for this meeting. So after Ms. Hay pointed out to town meeting members that it had been on the town website, I went back and found it under public events. So that's somebody like me who understands how these things work, and on the public events link, it called it a meeting. So those are the kind of things that I know you've heard a lot of frustration tonight, Jim, and I will also say in your behalf that there have been a lot of public meetings that discuss various aspects of this. But for people who don't follow the process, and even for people like me who do follow the process like a crazy person, it's not always easy to figure out where each stage is. And if you miss a meeting, it becomes even more and more difficult. And so this is too important in the context of all the work that we did on the center streetscape, in the context of all the work that was done on the other end of town in the Battle Green Master Plan, to just go forward with this. And so I know we can postpone this, and I'm going to finish my comments, but I know we can postpone this, indefinitely postpone at this meeting, and then perhaps bring it back in the fall. I know that there are good people who want to work on this, who know a lot more than I do about the solar piece. I'm just reacting to the aesthetics of this, and I'm learning some things. I've had some good conversations to understand why certain things can be done and certain things can't be done. But you don't want this level of anger out there when we can at least take the time to educate everybody, to hear their ideas and see what we've missed. Because one of the things that I've learned after many process, and you all know what I went through trying to get the visitor center project approved over 10 years, how many times it was sent back. But I always say, as messy as Lexington can be in terms of all the experts in town that know more than the staff sometimes does and make their feelings known, at the end of the day, we come up with a better project. And I think at the end of this process, we will come up with a better project. And so I'm urging really the selectmen who are on this meeting to take heed to that and think about that and consider indefinitely postponing this on their own so it doesn't come as a motion at a town meeting. Thank you.
Here. So the only thing I can really address in all of those comments is the reason why it was under public events is that the meeting calendar is really set for boards and committees, and Mike and I are not a board or committee, so that's why it was listed under public events.
It actually is listed under the town calendar and town events calendar.
Yeah, the town
It's
events.
under town events calendar. It is on the right side, not the left side.
Yeah. All right, there are no other, one more.
Do you want to talk or you go first? Is this on still? I'm Susan Erickson. I live at 31 Sherman Street. I appreciate the new renderings with the actual, in quotes, trees. It's a little bit different from that. We also have a fence. And I can tell you that when I look over my fence from my back door, I can already see the tops of the cars. And you know, top of what a RAV4 is probably about 5 feet, a little more than 5 feet maybe. So, you know, I think when we look at these things, at least for a lot of people who aren't accustomed to it, they don't recognize the scale. And if you look carefully at that, you can see that there are cars and they're way down near the bottom. So the scale is overwhelming. And I've been looking out at that gigantic dirt pile for the last month. And I think that's about 20 feet tall. And it completely blocks my view. It's what I look at. And I imagine this and I think it's just gonna create shadows. You won't be able to see Mass Ave anymore. You won't see Fletcher Park. And it's just kind of looming over Fletcher Park. So I really think, as everybody said, there's probably a better solution and a solution that maybe we could all work on together. As far as the neighborhood goes, yes, I know you send out notifications and things like that. But I sort of think when something like this is going to happen that is so much a part of the neighborhood should be better informed. And I don't feel that the neighborhood has been to this day, really. Thank you.
Okay. You also had a comment?
I am Nancy Page. I live at 6 Fletcher. And I want to point out a couple of things. One, Ted, my husband, already mentioned, you know, how he worked really closely with others on saving Fletcher Park. And that was a community effort. And everybody got involved. And even before that, there was supposed to be a sub repair shop where the Dunkin' Donuts is that we all fought and got them to say no. And shortly after, you know, Fletcher Park became saved, I was approached by the original founders of the farmers market who came. They actually asked my neighbor across the street who they were friends with, is there anyone in your neighborhood who can come and meet with us so that we can make sure that the neighborhood feels comfortable with what we're proposing to do for the farmers market? And it was such a wonderful experience to go and sit with them and have coffee and meet with Jeannie Krieger, who was on the select board at the time, and talk about their concerns about parking on our street and all of the things that we might be concerned about, to the point where when Jeannie Krieger said, you should, you know, draw up presentation boards and show the select board what we want to do, you know, so that they understand what it looks like. I actually volunteered to do it and did it for them because I was so impressed, and designed a logo. And, you know, so the farmers market and Fletcher Park has been such a part of our neighborhood that we became a part of because we were involved in it. And I think that speaks to what Ted was saying, in that when we all work together on things, it's great. And you know, the farmers market is a pain in the butt sometimes. People park on my lawn. It's noisy sometimes, but it's worth it. It's an amazing public space. And A, we won't be able to see it anymore, but B, this overshadowing thing just doesn't feel like part of that. That's one point. And the other point that I want to make in terms of the communication to the neighborhood with both the police station and this, is we all have to remember that this all happened during COVID. And, you know, people were away, people weren't going out, people weren't paying attention the way that I think they might in some times. And I think that's something for everyone to kind of remember. And in some ways, I think it was Susan who mentioned to me, it feels like this was kind of pushed through while everybody wasn't paying attention. And yes, maybe shame on us for not. But as others have said, it's very hard to be involved and understand how all the process works. So anyway, thank you for having the meeting tonight. I think it's worth it. And I hope that, as everyone has said, that you really take to heart what we're all saying. And remember that when you were asked at that select board meeting where they were making the presentation to be approved to go to town meeting, if the neighborhood had been involved, there was dead silence. And the architect said, or you said, we were waiting for it to be approved before we got the neighborhood involved. That was the answer that was made. That's not, we involved the neighborhood in the process. Thanks.
I believe what Mr. Cronin said was that he was notifying the select board before he did anything in the community, but Dan Voss has got his hand up, so Dan, if you want to unmute.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Jim. So Dan Voss from Sustainable Lexington. First of all, I think the meeting's been, super helpful so that, the communication channels do open up, and for folks that haven't seen the information up to this point, it's a chance to see some of the really good renderings that have been completed. It may answer many questions folks had. We're really encouraged with the majority of the feedback, which is acknowledging that we really need to that there is not objection to solar. It's a question of having participation in the process of the design, and that there's a sense within the community that we can make this a net zero building, and still achieve the goals of the surrounding community. So I think that's really positive. I will say that I do believe that, and Mike touched on this a little earlier, that early in the process, and I should acknowledge there's been a tremendous amount of work done over the course of a year within the HDC, within the architectural firm, at public meetings, month after month, looking at renderings and options for these arrays. And I think that some of the suggestions that have popped out, regarding having a more distributed structure on the site, and still achieving the goals of a net zero building have been looked at, and some of those sketches can probably be provided or shown as sort of the history of this, and what we've developed here is what has been developed here, and this is based on my sort of experience in tracking the process, is a compromise solution. There are trade-offs. Mike was talking about some of those earlier, the movement of the array to avoid, removing trees, the trade-off between having a distributed structure and having a single structure from an HDC standpoint. All of these are unfortunately trade-offs. There's no ideal solution. And a tremendous amount of work has been put into this up to this point, along with open meetings to discuss it. I did want to just touch on a couple of things, just so that we're aware of it as we're thinking about where we need to build these systems, or how we need to address this issue of distributed generation in town. The town has been mapped. It's an established urban environment. It's not possible for us to offset the impact of our new buildings by looking elsewhere in town. If anything, we're struggling to find areas, even with undeveloped land, that would allow us to fully offset, the municipal load, and that's using municipal property. And if we don't do that, we're just simply moving the issue to our neighboring towns. So that's why, once again, a tremendous amount of effort was put into the integrated building policy, and why we've heard overwhelmingly that the community is asking for what's being delivered here. Now, that's not to say that consultation has been perfect, and it's not to say that there aren't trade-offs, but that the overwhelming community feedback has been that we need to strive for net zero. And what strive for net zero means is not, well, we could achieve it, but let's just not. It's there are some properties that just you cannot build enough distributed generation on it to offset the energy load of the building. In this case, we could build more solar. Yeah, the architectural team and the design team looked at this. We're incredibly mindful in saying, let's just meet the requirement of this building. While if you were to be completely objective, you would look at this and say, well, why wouldn't we build more to offset some of the buildings that don't have the benefit of the property around these facilities? So I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware that there's been a detailed analysis of the town. We know every square foot where we can build solar in the town. If we don't strive to do this in already developed areas, then there are greater trade-offs. And if we don't strive to do this as a whole, as a community, we're just pushing the problem to our neighboring communities. So I think that from a Sustainable Lexington standpoint, very encouraged by this meeting. I think it's great that more people are involved in the discussion, but I did want to make sure that everyone knew that there was an acknowledgement that there are going to be trade-offs. That's understood, but it's important that we don't try and slide this responsibility to another town or to other parts of the town. When a building is built, we really should be striving to address its energy needs on site. One other item, just in terms of technology and timing, I do acknowledge that there is work being done now with the Investment Reduction Act to bring onshore manufacturing of silicon wafers. It's a tremendously small percentage of the market, and unlikely that it would appear in panels that we'd be using for this. I would say that just pragmatically, there's really not an opportunity for a revolution in technology in the next 3 to 5 years that's going to affect the optimal solution for a site like this. And so if we're talking about delaying for a year, it's not going to be delaying for a year in order to get a new technology, alternative solutions that haven't been considered already. So I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page there. I think that's the comment I had, Jim, but really am encouraged by the fact that this discussion is happening.
Great, thank you. We also have John Himmel. You want to unmute?
Good evening. My name's John Himmel. I'm actually very sorry that it seems like the town has been insensitive to the abutters. The streetscape project attracted a lot of comments, and the town fortunately was willing to work with an ad hoc committee. There was an ad hoc committee for the Hosmer House, which actually recommended that the best use of Fletcher Field was without Hosmer House to maximize the grass. It is interesting. I get the sense from listening to the meeting this evening that it seems like and it's not correct, that the staff is insensitive. There have been a lot of citizens involved and unfortunately not the abutters as much, in meetings on Fletcher Field with the Hosmer House ad hoc committee. I don't remember all the constituents, but I do remember the tourism committee had a representative there. There were people from the farmers market and so forth. There were discussions about how to use it. I know that the HDC, as somebody mentioned, indicated that they wanted to see a whole plan for the field, or for the Fletcher Field, which seemed like a really good idea. And at town meeting last fall, I think it was, or maybe spring, it must have been in the spring, an article was brought before town meeting to hire the architect of the building, or retain him, to do a design for Fletcher Field and a design for the canopy that would be compatible with the building. And one of the reasons for that is there's a lot of solar in town. There are canopies at the schools and on the schools and so forth, but speaking specifically about the canopies at grade, those were bought in a different mode. And Amoresco was retained for that based on, I believe, a price per kilowatt hour and not how it looked. And what you actually see here is a custom design for a solar canopy. We were concerned about how it would look, so we did retain somebody to listen to the comments. Unfortunately, the comments of the abutters were not there, but there were a lot of public meetings. You did see the select board meetings. There were numerous Sustainable Lexington meetings. There were permanent building committee meetings. There were HDC meetings. It's just unfortunate that it wasn't on your radar screen as abutters, because there was a lot of input and there was a lot of back and forth. And the design you see is actually responsive to some comments about items along the bike path, particularly the historic societies building, which used to be the train station, and some of those elements are showing up in this design. It's a communication issue that's both with staff and the folks in town who are active in town on projects like this. And unfortunately, those of you who are still working are perhaps not as actively involved in town politics and aware of what your town meeting members are seeing and what's going on in town. But there's a lot going on in town. There are 72 committees in town, and decisions are made by all of those committees. Some of them percolate up through town government, but we all have to be kind of vigilant. So thank you.
Thank you, John. It looks like everybody here has had a chance to speak, and I don't see anybody else online. Their hands up about 7:45. I know it's probably still snowing outside and people probably want to, the people who are here probably want to move on. So I'd like to just thank everybody who attended online and the people who are attending here in the room. And town meeting does start next week. This is something that I know that a number of the select board members were on meeting online. And so they've heard everybody's comments, and we'll see where this goes. So thank you.
Is this meeting recorded?
Yes, this meeting was recorded.
Right, letters.